Before I introduce the speaker, I would like to say happy birthday to somebody that I care and I love very much. Happy birthday, Jeff F. Like I said, I'm an addict and my name is Beth. It's a real honor and a privilege to introduce tonight's speaker to you. Um, I've been trying for 6 months to match this voice up with this face that I finally met yesterday. It was an honor and a privilege to be on the tape selection committee this year, along with some others. When this addict submitted his tape, it was late one night, and I was sitting there and I was listening to it. And at first I thought he was from California, because you know how they had that surfer type, yo dude type voice. That's what he sounded like, you know. His message was real clear. He has a great sense of humor. I laughed, I cried, and I still listen to that tape today. I enjoyed his message very much, and it was a real honor and a privilege to meet you. Without anything further from me, I give you Kermit-O from Montgomery, Alabama.
Oh my God.
It's all right, Kurt.
Yeah, right. Yes, sir. Now, I'm working on my drinking problem. I drank so much water I gotta piss. Girlfriend, can we talk, huh? I went upstairs to meditate, and I walked in my room and they'd turn the bed down and put the radio on, and it was, I'm so excited, I just can't hide it. I'm about to lose control and I just can't. I was like, uh-oh. A moment of silence for me. Thanks. My name is Kermit, and I'm an addict. I am clean today through the grace of God and Narcotics Anonymous, and I am honored to be here and speak to a group of members of NA. Honored. Because I know what kind of courage and strength it takes to stay clean for one day. And that's right, give yourselves a hand. And to the gentleman that I gave a hug to, the guy with one day, the other gentleman over here with one day, I'll tell you what they told me in the treatment center in September of 1981 when I went to my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting. They said, you never have to use again the rest of your life, one day at a time in Narcotics Anonymous. September 6th, I celebrated 15 years clean. From that first Narcotics Anonymous meeting, when I heard the reading of our literature, and I heard another addict share, and I knew that I was at home, I never had an excuse to use since that day. This is lovely. This is lovely, When I stood up for 15 years and I heard the people in the room saying, give that guy a hug, Cincinnati knows how to reach out to the old timer. And I've gone to places where I wasn't reached out to, where I felt like people were saying, you got 14 years, show me, motherfucker. Where they had an anniversary for the oldest group in the whole state, and I had more clean time than anyone there. And after I stood up at their countdown, two newcomers came up to say hello because they'd never met anybody that was that much clean time. And no one else came to say, would you like to do an H&I? Would you like to come speak in my home group? Welcome. That's why I'm in Alabama. I took 1 year of that shit and said, bye. Narcotics Anonymous is a lot bigger than right here. Thank God. I remember I was flying to Texas to speak, and I'd had my anniversary, and it sucked, and, I was on the World International Committee a bunch of years ago, and we put together a newsletter called the Meeting by Mail, and it's real neat. And if you want to participate in something exciting in Narcotics Anonymous, there's a newsletter, and you just write to the World Service Office the address on your book, and ask to be put on the Meeting by Mail. And what it is it's a newsletter that goes all around the world for people who are isolated in different parts of the world, either physically, in wheelchairs or through distance. And in there at the back, they have people's clean time, and it was September, and I was going down to this convention, and I opened up my Meeting by Mail, and I read down the list of people, and I got down and said, 14 years clean, Kermit-O from New York, and I started to cry because Narcotics Anonymous recognized my clean time. All right, God, where are we going? I turn this stuff over to God, It's like, I have not erred from the spiritual path, I have not deviated 1 inch. I have turned my will and life over to the care of God. Now, if God chooses to use me as the biggest horse's ass you've ever seen, what am I to say? Yeah. I went to that Narcotics Anonymous meeting. I was in my 3rd treatment center trying to get clean. I went my first treatment in August 1979, where I was immediately put in what the well-dressed addict wears, blue pajamas. And I'm sitting there twitching and growling, and when you're in treatment 2 weeks, you're well, and they sick you on the newcomers, so a bunch of them well people came to get me, and they walked down the hall, and they grabbed me and said, we're going to go to this alcohol meeting. And I was like, cool, I'm a social chameleon, I fit in anywhere, tell me the game plan, So I'm bopping down the hall, we get to this meeting in this little room. It was, like a regular meeting room, and had this long table, and I looked around, it was these 40 and 50-year-old guys, and they had big red noses and pot bellies out to here, and they were bald back to there, and they said, if you want what we've got. And I said, fuck no! I'd be willing to go to any length not to catch that, whatever. I quit drinking for the next 2 years. I went in my 3rd treatment completely strung out on heroin, but I was sober, thank you. Oh, and I get in treatment, I'm well all of a sudden, junior counselor, You get that first half, I admit my life, I'm powerless over my addiction. Well, skip the second half, let's get back to this management. Sitting in them treatment groups, you gotta get honest, motherfucker. I haven't written a single assignment, haven't done anything. I like what that guy says. He says, he goes to the H&I meetings, and the guy's there in the front row, and, through your whole talk, he's got his hand up, and you know what he's going to say. You pick him, and he goes, I worked my first 3 steps with my sponsor. I've been making amends to my family. Getting ready to do my 4th step. These have been the best 2 days of my life. See, I always got in treatment and I wanted to work them first 3 steps, 1, 9, and 12. I surrender, I sorry, I help you. Uh-huh. They told me, you need to go to a halfway house for 6 months. I said, you're right. I'm a 3-time loser. Then I called on my higher power. I don't know if her name's Patty. I said, honey, they think I should go to a halfway house. What do you think? She said, oh, no, you have to come home. I cry all the way there. And I said, what do I tell them? She said, tell them you've made your mind up. I went back to group. I've made my mind up. My life wouldn't be worth living if she left me. We were married a year later, and 9 months after that, we were annulled, and my life's been fine ever since. So much for I thought, But I left, Got in that car. God had moved me from the western half of the state of Virginia to all the way down to the beach, where 30 days before I got there, they'd started the first NA meeting. I'm clean today through H&I. There's some people from Virginia Beach were bringing it over, And I got in that car, and we drove 3 hours across the state past Richmond out to the mountains, and I saw a sign that said 7 miles to town, and the disease started talking. And it was loud. Where can we get some dope? How can we get some money? What kind of story can we tell her? And I'm like, we're in a Honda. She's going to hear you. We get back to town, and I moved in with my best friend. See, my brother was shooting dope, so I couldn't live with him. So I moved in with my best friend. He was only dealing cocaine. I made a decision. So we get to this basement apartment, and he's thrown a mattress on the floor in an empty room, and I lay down with Patty, and I just started shaking. And I was right between the rock and the hard place, where I was going to do what I always did when faced with a feeling. I was going to run, or I was going to try a new way of life. And something cracked, and I said, Patty, I'm really scared, and I don't know if I can do this stuff, and I want to use. What should we do? And she said, well, there's a meeting tonight, and we can go to the AA meeting. I said, okay. And we can go to my folks, get something to eat. I said, okay. And I got to that meeting and went and sat down, and I said, my name's Kermit, and I'm a drug addict. I wanted them to know I use drugs. And about 3 or 4 people said hello. And this was in 1981 in the mountains of Virginia. They were not thrilled to see drug addicts, But, God bless them. They loved me until I could get back to Narcotics Anonymous, And I owe those people my life just like I owe it to you. The guys, it came around to me, and, I just raised my hand. All I'm thinking about is getting high, and this little redneck sitting next to me had a shit-eating grin on. He had the answer. He's just smiling, You won't believe what he says to me. Get this. You won't believe this. He says, just don't get high today. I said, run that by me again? You mean today, like, till I go to bed? He said, yeah, till you go to bed. I said, wonder why I didn't think of that. I said, oh, I could do that. And I woke up, I went to bed that night clean. And I woke up the next morning and I was free. Because I realized that I could stay clean for one day. And the second decision I made that next morning was the second half of that first step. I decided to turn my will and life over to the care of the people in the meeting. And I was not going to do it my way anymore. My way does not work. Period. That's what the second half of the first step is about. Management, you know, that our lives had become unmanageable. I went to every meeting I could get to, you know. My life was simple. Everything was good. I surrendered, you know. I love that shit. You know, you come in here with that, you finally understand what surrender is. You surrender, you're willing, and 30 days later, you tell your sponsee to do something and go, why do I have to do that? 30 days ago, you'd have done anything I told you to do. Why do I got to do that? I was going to the AA meetings because that's all we had in 1981. And seeing a drug counselor, group therapy stuff, and with a bunch of other people. And after 4 months, he gave me and another guy a starter kit. He said, why don't you go start one of those NA meetings? Wonder why I didn't think of that. And that's what we did. We wrote letters around town to all the churches and everything, you know, where they had the AA meetings. We're no dummies, you know. And we get these letters back, you know, you can read between the lines, you know, but they said, the Board of Deacons do not feel that it is prudent at this time to have a bunch of drug-shooting junkies in our basement and give you a key. Are you crazy? Sincerely, Reverend so-and-so, you know. We must have sent 40 letters out. We got one letter back. We got one letter back from this Cherry Avenue church, and they said, yeah, we'd love to see you. So me and my running partner, this tall brother, we got dressed in suits. It's a program of attraction. And we went down to talk to this guy. And we have this 12-step fellowship based on the tenets of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the guy gave us a key. And it was neat. I mean, I got excited, you know. I was the committee. No, I mean, I was the H&I committee, the PI committee, the literature committee. The phone line was at my house. I was chairman of the GI committee, guilt and intimidation, my favorite position. And I ran around town telling all these treatment centers, send addicts to our NA meeting. One, you know. And I get a call from this one treatment center. You know, they got the guy gives me a call and he says, you know, you came by to talk about that NA stuff. And so we've got this 16-year-old girl. She's on our 5th floor psych ward. She'd been eating speed. She's in here for her second time trying to commit suicide. We don't know what to do with her. Would you come talk to her? The big guru, I had 4 months. What the hell did I know? So I said, okay. You know, and I went over to the place, you know, and they gave me a chair and her a chair in this empty room. And, you know, when you've been using for like 15 years and you've got 4 months of recovery, you're going to talk about sickness for this much. And, you know, I was like, told her every nasty, rotten, disgusting thing that I'd ever done in my life. And in the last 5 minutes, I said, and I've got 4 months clean, and we're starting the NA meeting next Wednesday. Would you like to go? And she said, okay. And God bless her, Mom trusted us and let her come to the meeting. And she came to that meeting, and she was having trouble with that one day at a time stuff. You know, she'd go a couple days use, and so I said, well, Jennifer, why don't you just not use from this meeting till the next one? And she said, wonder why I didn't think of that. In 30 days, Jennifer will be celebrating 15 years clean of Narcotics Anonymous. We didn't have a basic text because it wasn't written yet. We didn't have no chips. We didn't have nothing. We had a white IP, who, what, how, and why, because I was the literature committee, which I made 100 copies of. What we had was the therapeutic value of one addict helping another. Yes, sir. I was going to the AA meetings, doing our NA meeting, you know, doing service. And I started to try to work these steps, you know. It's great. If you look at that little white book that we got, it's great. This was the direction we had. Start with step one, take step one from the previous steps, and once you've done that, go on to step two. Well, what the hell's direction is that? Nothing, you know. Be grateful you got a text, folks, and it works how and why, and, you know, God bless. It was through our literature process that we developed what we now know as Narcotics Anonymous. Our concept of addiction, our concepts, and, you know. So I'd sit in the A meetings and listen to stuff and, you know, say, okay, I'm on third step now. And I'd start trying to practice this stuff, you know. And when you're new and you got no direction, you know, you're looking for signs from God. Okay, it's a red light. Okay, God doesn't want me to go down this road because there's going to be an accident. And, you know, a napkin would fall off a table. Oh, it's a sign from God. You know? So I said, all right, you know. So, you know, it's the way God works. When you're willing, you know, he'll give it to you. And I got into Patty's car. I had 9 months clean. And sat down, and there was a letter there from the sheriff's department. I knew they wanted me to speak. And I opened this letter up, and it's a warrant for my arrest. And now I know this is something y'all have never done. It was for writing checks knowing there's no funds in the account. Yeah. So I was mad, right? I'm being good. I'm doing the right thing, you know? I'm participating in recovery. I'm doing a service at the end. I'm mad. I look up in the sky. I said, all right, God, what do you want me to do about this one? And the Beatles song, Let It Be, came on the radio. Speaking words of wisdom, let it be. I was like, I don't need thunder and lightning. Beatles will do just fine. So I said, all right, we're going to let go and let God. We're going to turn this problem over to God, and we're going to act as if he's got it already taken care of. And we're going to just do the next right thing to be done. Now, when you do this, there's a little part here, a deal you got to do, and it's called willingness. So I went down to court. Like Richard Pryor says, I went there for justice, and that's what I found, just us. Every time I go to court, I want to go with a stack of white books. 20 days, here, have a white book. Drunk and disorderly, have a white book. And I went down there with willingness. You know, I was so willing. You know, when you're new, I was going to tell everything. You know, yes, Your Honor, David Reingold and I broke in the train station when we were 11 and stole those cigarettes out of the machine. And he didn't want to know all that stuff. You know, I sat in the back row where all the guilty people sit. And they call my name, and I start doing that long walk. You know, the one, God grant me strength, God grant me strength. Because it was the same judge I'd been before 2 other times who said, if I see you here again, I'm going to try you to the fullest extent of the law. Now get the hell out of my court. And I walked up, and I stood in front of this guy, and I had willingness. And he said, Mr. Osman, he said, you want to tell us something about this check? And I went, well, Your Honor, he said, hold it. And he calls the lawyer over for Safeway, and he says, Counselor, he says, do you recognize this check as a year old? And the lawyer said, well, yes, Your Honor. He said, well, you can't prosecute this man in a criminal case for a check that's a year old. He says, well, I can't. He said, no, you can't. He said, now you can prosecute him in a civil suit to get your money back, unless, Mr. Osman, you're here to pay the money you owe. What do you think I said? Yes, Your Honor, that's what I'm here to do. He's pay the man $32, case dismissed. I did not get to open my mouth. If I'd opened my mouth, I'd have blown the whole deal. All God wanted from me was willingness. That's what I tell my sponsees. You know where God is? He's right on the other side of willingness. Try it, you'll find him. I I I moved from where I lived. I moved down to the beach because I thought I'd fix my wife, and that didn't work. And I I had hooked up with what we call Greater NA back then. This is Greater NA, folks. You know, the service, the conventions, everything. It's Greater NA. It's greater than my little home group. That was for sure. You know, all 5 of us. You know, when you got 4 people in your whole fellowship and somebody new comes in, you grab onto them. You're not going to use today. You're sleeping at my house. That's 1/4 of your whole fellowship. You know, it's easy now. I'll just send them to the detox. And I'm sorry, I do it too. You know, I met this guy Larry, you know, and we called him the old man. He was an older guy, cowboy hat, and he had, oh God, man, 9 years. That was forever, you know. And you know, because the old timer back then had a year, you know. That was forever, you know. And he called me up, and where I learned to say yes. When Larry called up and say, we're going here, I'd say, okay. Because I knew wherever we went, we were going to be with NA people, and we were going to have a good time, and we were going to be okay. And Larry called me up, he said, we're going to convention. I said, great. What's a convention? He said, we're going to Georgia. I said, oh man, all right. And he loaded up this van full of newcomers. That was Larry's thing. He'd pull up, he'd have this van, you'd open it up, and the newcomers would bubble out like at the circus. Chock full of newcomers. And we got in this van, drove down to Georgia, and got down there and met the fellowship. And I heard some wild stuff. This was 1983 in February in Georgia. And they had just put together the white floppy form of the basic text. It was just an approval form. And they were handing it out. And at the opening meeting, this guy got up to the podium. He said, you know what I like about this convention? This is a Narcotics Anonymous convention with Narcotics Anonymous speakers. That was a novel idea back then, you know? Because all the old timers were clean and sober, drug addicts and alcoholics that attended 2 fellowships, you know? And I heard another guy got up right after that, and he said, I don't know much, but last year I heard, work the steps or die, motherfucker. And I sat there going, wow, these must be real drug addicts. Because nobody's talking about working steps at home because I'm in charge. Yeah, I'm on the internet. And I sponsor this guy in Egypt, man. Yeah, really. Awesome. This guy's got... The guy's got 4 years clean. He's an old-timer there. And, you know, the guy just ducking and diving and won't follow direction. And all he says, my sponsor just won't follow direction. I said, well, yeah. I bet you if you start following directions, they'll start following directions. You know, do as I say, you know, not as I do. Not in Narcotics Anonymous, you know. If you want what I've got, get off your ass and get it. Because I did, you know. I'm clean today through the grace of God, the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous, and a lot of my damn effort. And I'm not going to discount myself today. Yeah. Let's have a hand for my humility. I'm a wonder in my own mind, let me tell you. That's what I was reading something, a guy said, toot your horn loud, because if you're right, it'll be great, and if you're wrong, nobody will remember it a couple days later anyways. And what else I was hearing down there were people talking about making a commitment to only go to Narcotics Anonymous for their recovery. And a couple months later, I went to Tennessee to the convention there. And yes, sir. Yes, sir. Volunteer. Right on. I went to the convention, and this was like my second convention, and I saw them people get up to the microphone, so every workshop I was in, I'd raise my hand, I was in this World H&I, and I was raising my hand, and we didn't even have any H&I meetings where we lived, and I was arguing with the world chair. At the end of the convention, this friend of Larry's comes up to me, this little guy, Joseph from Memphis, and he says, you must have talked on every one of them tapes. Thanks for sharing, buddy. He says, he said, I heard you talking that you were clean and sober. I said, yeah, physically clean from drugs and emotionally, spiritually sober. He says, said, I looked up the dictionary definition of the word sober, and it means somber, serious, moderate, and not drunk. He said, and I can't afford to limit my recovery in that way. He said, I looked up the dictionary definition of the word clean, and it means free from dirt and disease. And he said, when I came in here, he said, I was a dirty and diseased guy. He said, and I go to Narcotics Anonymous not only to get physically clean from drugs, but spiritually clean, emotionally clean, clean on the inside, clean in the way I deal with the world. He said, where do you find your recovery? I said, well, I work in treatment, I was well, Oh, it's so easy to look good when you're standing next to somebody who's puking on his shoes. I'm treatment man. Keep coming back, it gets better. I said, so I go to the NA meetings I can get to, but, I go to the AA clubhouse because we don't have no noon meetings. And he said, all my life I never made a commitment anywhere. I never stuck it out, If I didn't like this girl, I had another one across town. If I didn't like this group of friends, I had some other friends over there. If I didn't like this school, I get my folks to move me to another one. He said, I never made a commitment anywhere and stuck it out. He said, you need to make a decision where you want to recover. I don't care, whichever one. He said, but if they didn't have a speaker for the Wednesday AA meeting, would you be missed? I said, no, they got hundreds of people there. He said, well, if they didn't have somebody to chair the Tuesday night NA, would you be missed? Yeah, there's only 8 of us. He says, you need to make a decision where you want to recover and make a commitment. And when the service stuff gets difficult and it gets emotional, he says, you can't take your ball and go home. You got to stick it out and grow up. So I said, thanks for sharing, buddy. See you later. Got in a plane, went back to Virginia. Where do you think I was the next day? Sitting in that noon AA meeting at the clubhouse, tapping my foot. Tell me I can't be here. I just picked up my 2-year gold coin. And the topic was humility or something. They picked on me, and this guy came up to me. I said, my name's Kermit, and I'm a drug addict. I was still using adjectives. And at the end of I didn't even say anything about my using. I respected them to not do that. It's not their primary purpose. This guy comes up to me at the end of the meeting and says, we don't talk about drugs here. Some old drunk. And, I said something, well, you stay sober, I'll stay clean, and maybe we'll both make it. And he marched off, and guess where I was the next day? Right? Sitting in my seat at the AA clubhouse, tapping my foot. Tell me I can't sit here. And this little voice came in my head. What are you doing here? And I thought, resentment? And the little voice said, is that any reason to attend a 12-step fellowship? And I said, no. And I got up out of my seat in that AA meeting in 1983, and I made a commitment to only go to Narcotics Anonymous. And the amazing thing about that commitment was, first off, the next time I saw that jackass from Memphis, I asked him if he'd be my sponsor, because I wanted what he had to offer, because he talked to me about integrity. He talked to me about putting my money where my mouth is. And the other thing that happened was that when I made a commitment to only go to NA, people I sponsor, guess what? I can't sponsor 2 first steps. I'm sorry. You do what you like, but if you want to be sponsored by me, you need to go to Narcotics Anonymous. So these other people started making a commitment to only go to NA, which was novel back then. What turned around was about a year later, we had lots of NA meetings, you know, because there was lots of people who were only going to NA, and they needed some place to recover. And we started fighting for that place to recover, right? We didn't want to hear all this other language stuff. You know, that old thing, there's nothing worse than a convert. I used to be an AA member, right? And I'm sitting there going, sober means short of being entirely recovered. You know, they said the S word, hit them with a basic text, boom. Keep coming back, gets better. Calling people out in the meetings, you know. Started the Purist movement with a bunch of people. Did newsletters. I took them over to England, passed them out over there. Got called out in a world conference one weekend out in California. They called me in this office. 8 people were sitting on a board. They had to talk to me. I was such a danger to Narcotics Anonymous, right? They said, we'd like to know about this movement. We just made some copies and put them on a table. Sorry. All right, I'm a wimp, you know. But boy, could I rile people up, you know. Just tell them what my sponsor told them. Man, you either stand for something or you'll fall for anything. They fell for that. I guess I want to talk about that stuff because I went to a meeting the other night in Montgomery, and there was somebody there who finds his recovery in 2 different places, and he had about 4 years, and you know, and we were talking about service was the topic or something, and he talked about his service and said, well, by the way, it's in AA, you know, and went on, and the guy next to him started this 10-minute monologue, you know, you know, to be clean or not to be clean, that is the question. You know, I call it soliloquy recovery, you know, to use or not to, you know, they got to talk for half an hour. Come on, in a meeting. Sharing means sharing the time, too. Yes. Now, of course, I can see that shit because I did it all the time. You know? I've violated all the traditions. Now I can really talk about them. But after he went through this whole monologue stuff and, you know, and proceeded to shame this guy and talk about the wonders of Narcotics Anonymous, it finally got to me, and I said, you know, my name's Kermit, and I'm an addict, and I want to apologize to the gentleman from AA, you know. Because what it's about is we don't have to stand up for Narcotics Anonymous anymore. Narcotics Anonymous is just fine, you know. We are a very strong, healthy fellowship today, and we will not fall apart because someone says the S word, or if they go somewhere else for a little bit of recovery, you know. Now, of course, we need to let them know what we do here, right? Let's not beat someone up because they walk in the door ignorant when we don't tell them, right? All we have to do is put in our readings, you know, what we read at the beginning of this meeting. You know, we have a problem when addicts identify themselves as other than addicts. And this is why. Please help us. Thank you. Respect us. That's it. We can put the baseball bat away. And we can open up our hearts. Because if we do that, maybe some of our old timers might come back to meetings. Because I drove a lot of them away myself. Yes, sir. I sure did. I hit an emotional bottom at 5 years after saving Narcotics Anonymous and the whole world. You know? Yes, I'd come to believe that service would restore me to sanity. I wanted to be WSR, represent the world to God. But there's some people in California who already think they have the position. You can call them up, they'll tell you. Ooh, let's get spiritual. So I went looking for a new sponsor. Joseph was 900 miles away. I wasn't calling him. I wasn't talking to him. So I got hold of a guy who was local, and this was a humble guy, you know. He had less clean time than me, but he was humble. He was quiet. He was the kind of leader that just led, you know. You just wanted to follow him. You know. And I walked up to him at the 5th Virginia Convention, and I looked him in the eye, and we were always on other sides of the purist argument, you know. He was sure I was going to bitch about something, and I said, Michael, would you be my sponsor? And the guy looked at me, and tears came up in his eyes. And he said, I'd be honored to be your sponsor. You know? He said, where are you at in these steps? I said, I don't know, 7, 1. You tell me, I'm lost. He said, what's the last thing you did? I said, well, I wrote out the first 3 steps and sent them to my sponsor. He said, good, we'll do a 4th step. I said, all right. Give me that booklet with the 500 questions and I'll be gone for a year. He said, oh, no. He said, I just want you to write about 3 things: resentment, sex, and fear. I said, oh, I can do that in 1 sentence. I'm resentful and fearful that my wife won't give me sex. Can I? He said, no. He said, we're going to make an appointment for a 5th step. I said, a what? He said, an appointment. He said, 30 days. I said, 30 days? He said, yeah. He said, nah. He said, a 4th step is really 9 and 20. I said, whoa, 9 and what? He said, 9 months to worry about it and 20 minutes to write it. He said, so I'll give you 30 days. You'll worry about it for 3 weeks, and then you'll write. He was right. I got down to that last stuff and just, you know, started cramming, you know. And a lot of stuff came up in my inventory that I didn't see, you know. I couldn't see until I put it on paper, you know. I started writing about my sister, and I said, you know, I felt abandoned when Georgie left town, and tears started coming out of my eyes. She left when I was 12, and I was, 32 writing that inventory. And I went over to do my 5th step with him. The best story I ever heard about 5th step, this guy's in there with his sponsee, and he's reading his 4th step, and the sponsor says, well, just read everything, and, you know, if it ain't on the paper, just add to it. And so this guy's reading, and he's adding, and he's reading, and he's adding, and you know, he gets to the end, and the sponsor says, is that it? And the guy says, yep, that's it. He says, you sure? He says, yep, nothing left. Sure. You sure? He said, yeah. He says, okay, give me a hug. I'll see you at the meeting. And the sponsee starts to leave. He gets halfway down the hall. He yells back, I fucked the chicken. And the sponsor yells back, did yours die too? There's only so many things that the human mind and body can perform, and honey, we've done them all. So if you think your stuff is so weird that we're going to reject you, forget it. We will love you, you know. I tell you, what's the opposite of love? But see, hate is a strong emotion, just like love. The opposite of love is indifference. And think about that when you're hanging around with all your pals at the end of the meeting and the newcomer standing in the corner. The only thing we have to give is our time, you know, because someone gave their time to you. I went to do my inventory with my sponsor. It was, you know, a spiritual setup, you know, at the botanical garden at sunset with the cranes flying, you know. And I read all my stuff and shared all the extras and all that stuff. And at the end of that inventory, I finished all the readings, and he shared stuff with me. And he took my inventory and he rolled it up like this. And he held it in front of my eyes. And he said, not forever and not for always, but at this moment in time, are you entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character? Not forever, not for always, but right now. And I said, yeah, I'm ready. We bowed our heads and we shared that willingness with God. And we went back over to his house and we put all that stuff in a pile on the floor. in front of his house, and we lit it on fire. And we got on our knees and said the just for today and humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. And I like to say, if you get real, you get your resentments all out and you put them on paper and you write them down and you light them on fire, they'll be gone. Addicts will be going, here, burn this shit. Here, burn this. So no, defects and shortcomings are removed through action and prayer. Yes, sir. Made a list of all persons that made harm to me and became willing to have them make amends to me. Not. You know, in my active addiction, I used to get pills every week and eat bottles and eat bottles and eat bottles, and she got tired of it. She was only 18 years old. We had a 2-month-old baby at the foot of the bed, and I'd done my usual 3 and got in bed next to her, and she took the whole bottle and laid down next to me. She fell off the bed, hit her head on a glass table, and started screaming in a blackout for her life. And I woke up, got my dad up, and we got her to the hospital. They pumped her stomach. And you would have thought of all the amends that I had to make to her that would have been the worst. The biggest amend that I made to her was I said, Candy, I never allowed you to be right ever. That was the exact nature of my wrongs. Yeah. I had this guy who used to talk to me about relationships, and he'd come in and he was just, I got to find a woman around here. I got to find a woman. I can't find the right woman, and she's not around here. I just got to have the right woman. I'd say, you know, Bill, I'm getting really sick and tired of listening to this shit. So I want you to go home and write down everything this right woman has. I want you to write down what color hair she has, what color eyes, what are her likes, dislikes, everything about, and I don't want to hear another word about this till you're finished. So Bill comes back about a week later with this mangled piece of paper. He says, here. I said, no, read it to me, Bill. He says, well, she's got blonde hair and green eyes, and she's a perfect hourglass figure, and she likes to cook and clean, and she likes to sew, and she likes to get me up in the morning with coffee and cigarettes, and she's real intelligent and witty, and you know, whenever we're in a crowd, you know, and she's talking and I walk in, she sort of backs off and gives me center stage, and she's got a lot of money, and I said, so that's a pretty dynamite woman you're describing there, Bill. I said, now, would a woman like that go out with a shit like you? He said, no. I said, the idea, Bill, is to make yourself into the kind of man that would attract that kind of woman. And by working the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous and going through 3 marriages, I can really tell you about relationships. I've been able to make myself into the kind of man that attracted the woman that's in my life today. You know? Now, the girls were on the committee, and they voted me to speak here, so I know they wanted me here to talk about relationships. And, you know, we have a lovely relationship because we have one primary purpose, kisses. If you make kisses your primary purpose in your relationship, you won't give a fuck about anything else. You just ain't been kissed right, honey. I tell you, she's a pistol. Can we talk? Can we talk? Huh? I've been ill the last couple of months, and I got them hemorrhoids, and I'm gaining too much weight, you know. My sponsee said, you know, you got to uncover yourself up there. Don't just tell all the good stories. Tell what's happening with you. So I'm up to 245 pounds, and my dad, who's always been very obese, has been losing weight. And I saw him day before yesterday, and he's only 20 pounds heavier than me. And I'm scared. You know? My friend Greg has 25 years clean. He says his only problem is that he's powerless over his addiction and his life is unmanageable. Right? Yeah. So I got to use them suppository things. And I'm having trouble with it. I said, honey, could you help me here? And she says, all right, she says, and I'm up on the bed. She said, well, I haven't got all night. She says, I don't know. How's your cash flow? I love it. I gave her $200 a couple of days later. I'd done a show. I gave her $200, and that night she helped me. I said, I want my $200 worth, honey. She went out and bought herself a bracelet with a nice diamond and ruby bracelet and came home and showed it to me. I said, what'd you do with that? I gave you the money. She said, oh, you didn't expect me to spend this on groceries, did you? I said, now I know when I give you money, it comes with a disclaimer. You know? Here's your money. Now you got to use it for growth. Oh, man. Oh, where are we going? God, help me, Lord. So right now I'm at step 11 and 12. And I say 11 and 12 because they're synonymous, you know. Step 11 says, you know, it talks about, what does it say? I got to read this stuff off a fucking piece of paper. We sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. It says praying only for knowledge of His will, only for His will, only. That tells me that I'm about God's business. And what is God's business? God's business is to be present for the miracle. And the miracle is wherever love is happening. Yes, sir. Where can I be an instrument for love today? And of course, if you're about God's business and about service, it don't matter where you live or who you're with or what's in your life or where you work, because all the rest of that stuff will get taken care of. Yes, and you won't care. Because you'll be too busy being about God's business, which is carrying the message to the addict who still suffers. It falls right into line with being of service, you know? Through my participation with Narcotics Anonymous, and I'll close out, I got to carry the message through another guy to my sister. And she just celebrated 13 years clean in NA. I was just down in Florida with my brother who's got 8 years clean in Narcotics Anonymous. I have a love that's beyond my wildest dreams. Beyond my wildest dreams. I've found my soulmate. And I could only do that because you people loved me enough till I could get to my inner child. And I have a brother that went through 11 treatment centers. And 2 days ago, we just put the stone on his grave because he died from AIDS. And he contracted the disease 1 year after I got clean. And he was my running partner. So it is only through the grace of God that I am standing here alive today in my right mind. Narcotics Anonymous gave me a God of my understanding who will be with me all the rest of my days. Narcotics Anonymous gave me a fellowship of people around the world who will love me for the rest of my life. Narcotics Anonymous gave me a fiancé, gave me back my sister and brother, gave me a purpose in life. And what am I supposed to give back? If I went to a meeting and carried this message every night for the rest of my life, I would never repay the debt of gratitude I owe to Narcotics Anonymous. And when they call you to do a H&I meeting, honey, don't tell them you got to go get your hair done. Because somebody didn't get their hair done the night you were in treatment, and they came and carried a message to you. And when you come to the conventions with the 9 pounds of gold on your chest, don't ask for an indigent package, motherfucker. Yeah. Yes, sir. That's right. Yes. Oh, I can go on, honey. Let me tell you. Yes, step on some feet. Yes, sir. That's right. We have no opinions in Narcotics Anonymous except all the people that we choose to speak that have a lot of opinions. Those are the ones we really like. I'll tell you one other story and then I'm going to close. My sponsor, Joseph, got clean over the phone. He hit bottom 1978 in Memphis, Tennessee, and there was no NA. He was going to AA, he was getting ready to pick up his 2-year cake, and he was smoking dope and on lithium. And he knew something wasn't working. So he went looking around for help, and he went to the local library, and this man, Jimmy Kay, who was one of our founders, he was the guy that stuck it out all the way through. He was at that first business meeting, and when NA sort of disbanded around 1960, he and some other folks picked it right back up and kept it going. In the World Service Office 10 years, 11 years ago, when you called the World Service Office, you got Jimmy's Kitchen. This man gave everything he had to Narcotics Anonymous. And he had sent little white books to all the libraries around the country. And Joseph went to the library and went looking for help, and the lady said, well, we got this thing called Narcotics Anonymous. We've got an address and we got a phone number. And of course, Joseph, being an addict, said, well, screw the address, give me the phone number. And he called Jimmy collect every day. And Jimmy talked to him about complete abstinence. He says, we don't use nothing, a day at a time. And he said, you need to go start a meeting. He said, and when an addict comes in, he said, you give him a hug. He said, you don't worry about the color of their skin or how they smell or what their dress is or what their socioeconomic background is. He said, because you won't stay clean and neither will they. He said, and if you've got something in the back of your mind that you're going to get in their pants or you're going to get in their wallet or you're going to get in their dress later on, he said, you won't make it and neither will they because you'll alter the way you share your message. He said, and you won't stay clean and there won't be another living clean addict in Memphis, Tennessee. And Joseph was ready to surrender to complete abstinence. See, and that's what I understand about color and Narcotics Anonymous. There is none. You know? I hug any addict. I reach out to any addict. Man, woman, old, young, black, white, anything. I'm Jewish. I sponsor a guy in Egypt, for Christ's sakes. You know, I went to the World Convention in Washington, D.C., Unified and Staying Alive in 1985. And when they were doing their bid, we were putting in a bid for Virginia. And that woman stood up from D.C. and she talked about the issue of color. She said, we use together, let's get clean together. And I said, fuck this, I'm voting for D.C. Because I'd run in the ghettos. I lived in the ghettos. My nickname was White Boy. They'd say it, I'd answer to it, you know. And she said, go start a meeting. So I went downtown Newport News to 25th and J where the crack was, and I started a meeting, right? And where I lived, I sponsored the only black guy. Now there's more black people than white in our fellowship in Virginia. It just takes one. Reach out to one person, it will make a difference, you know? It will make a difference, you know? And it's so exciting to me to sit here and be the token, you know? I'm the token everything. I'm the token white, token Jew, token old guy, token Southern guy. But you know what? I'm not a token of Narcotics Anonymous. I'm a member. I am a member and proud and standing. And I will stand till the blood drips from my nose to fight for Narcotics Anonymous. You know? I stood up at the World Convention of Narcotics Anonymous this year for 15 years clean, and it was the proudest moment of my life. Yes, sir. You're right. You know. Someone introduced us somewhere. I don't remember now. I guess we started talking, but I don't know what about. Michael was from Florida, by way of NYC. And from that moment on, he became a friend to me. Well, I always used to see him, and sometimes we'd drop by. And every time he'd be alone, just trying to get high. The high was never high enough. He tried day after day, and helplessly I watched his spirit simply slip away. God, he used to sit and brag the money and the dope he had, but I just can't forget how sad Michael looked to me. Well, I'd like to say in closing, the story is sad but true. And somewhere lives a Michael in me and all of you. And I am deeply grateful for what I have today, because I would be where he is if it wasn't for NA. Thanks.